آروم آروم شعله بر جان فکند، آروم آروم مهرت همچون کمند. برگردنم حلقه زد، آتش به جان و دل زد. تموم شده صبر من، دستم بگیر جان من. در حسرت روی تو، از تمنای تو. عمرم به سر شد ببین، پرده ز رویت فکن. مردم از هجرت، از غم رویت. سوخت ببین عاشق تو، از فراق تو. مردم از هجرت، از غم رویت. سوخت ببین عاشق تو، از فراق تو. از فراق تو، از فراق تو. از فراق تو، از فراق تو. از فراق تو، از فراق تو.
Type A non-organic beings that participate in such acts are often captivation keeper. These beings make themselves available to those who wish to acquire the aforementioned powers to obtain what seems to be beneficial information for helping, sabotaging, or otherwise subliminally manipulating the lives of others. We can divide information received from these beings into the following categories. 1. Seeing the future. 2. Writing thoughts. 3. Reading personalities. 4. Knowing the hidden details of private life, inner feelings, and confidential affairs of others. 5. Cosmic awareness and Kamal awareness. Not only is gaining insight in the first 4 categories, direct from the negative network or with the help of non-organic beings, not Kamal-oriented, but also insight into cosmic awareness and Kamal awareness, that in their essence are vital for humankind's journey. Gain from these beings is not in the direction of Kamal because the consequences of any interactions with these non-organic beings are very severe for human beings. Awareness that is useful for attaining Kamal is insight about God, self, and the material world. Only if attained on the step of love, this type of awareness has lasting effects that persist even after death and is valuable as Kamal awareness that becomes embedded in humankind's being. If attained through these beings, it is mere information. Further, attaining true insight about the material world, revealing secrets of what is also called the 7 layers of the universe, is impossible for non-organic beings, so any insight they provide into theism, self-realization, and cosmology cannot exceed what humankind already knows. Individuals may appoint one or more type A non-organic beings as their agents to use their knowledge and receive answers to their questions, but they are unaware that these beings' answers and knowledge has been acquired from other people. More importantly, they are unaware that the non-organic beings are slowly imposing their own will and influence upon them. Any decisions that people make on the basis of information from the SE beings may have serious and irreparable consequences on their lives. Not only because seeing the future, thoughts, and private information of others is not in the direction of Kamal, but also because such insights are not always based on truth or reality, and could be false information. One of the ways by which type A non-organic beings engage in fortune-telling and divination is scrying. Humankind's interest in 44. Reflective surfaces like mirrors results from our interest to controlling a virtual reality. This interest can lead to opening a channel into the negative or positive networks, and essentially, the mirror can reflect a manifestation of God or Satan. A person considers virtual reality that which he can control. If he stares into the mirror, it reflects his virtual reality for the purpose of seeing the future or events in the past. Non-organic beings engage in the individual's ultra mind system, and cause the desired images to appear before him. In some cases, the mirror captures captivation keepers to reveal the desired information. Throughout history, kings and high-powered people in society held seers and fortune-tellers in high esteem. Certain seers held their non-organ IC agents in mirror together, controlling the mirror and thus gaining insight into the future and the past. However, in some instances, through the interference of the positive network, or the radiational intrusion of their enemies, via witchcraft, they obtained false information upon which powerful people made important decisions that caused their collapse. Thereby, they entered a radiational war that usually turned out badly for them. Non-organic beings can increase creativity. Type B viruses increase the possessed individual's enthusiasm and drive, and thus increase negative or positive creativity. For instance, when a thief's mind body captures another thief's mind, the host becomes more skillful in robbery, which in turn is encouraged to find new ways to commit this crime. Type A viruses, however, do not stimulate creativity, and playing their role through intelligent methods does not result from their creativity because they cannot become inspired. They have only limited abilities within the boundaries of their role in the material world, and can choose to apply methods only within these boundaries. Chapter 3, Causes of Infection. By non-organic beings. 1. Common causes. Various factors contribute to and cause humankind's infection by non-organic beings, including common factors that cause infection by both type A and B viruses. Other causes of only type A infections will be discussed in the specific causes section. The common factors include being in a negative state, addiction, taking advantage of non-organic beings, being under the influence of spell or magicless, then incoherence of human body, transmission from parents. Being in a negative state, the most crucial condition that makes humankind susceptible to possession by non-organic viruses, is being in a negative state, such as fear, panic, anger, sadness, grief, anxiety, and despair. When one is in negative state, the negative radiation absorption and emission section of our psychological body, is open, making us vulnerable to possession by both type A and B non-organic viruses. This condition is so fundamental that even for a spell or magic to be activated, the individual must first be in a negative state. Therefore, one cannot argue that humankind is condemned to be captured by these viruses and has no role in our possession by these beings. Unless we are in a negative state, no spell or magic can affect us. The non-organic agents that activate spells have no means of possessing the individual's mind in a positive state. So each person is responsible for keeping his entire being safe in a positive state, lest he become vulnerable in negative state. Falling into a negative state can happen in many ways. For instance, watching a horror movie can cause fear. Fear opens the metaphorical lid over the negative radiation absorption and emission section of psyche. As a result, not only can the individual be possessed by spell keepers and captivation keepers, but also by type B non-organic beings eager to possess the individual's mind. Consequently, the mind's commanding unit suffers from disorders and transmits various obvious and subliminal commands that affect the individual's health, thoughts, behavior, and speech. Grief over a deceased loved one or a family member can also cause a negative state. This grief often reaches its peak during the funeral and burial in the cemetery, where many type B viruses are present, increasing the chances of infection. In general, being in a cemetery while in a negative state increases our vulnerability to infection by type B non-organic viruses. Addiction is a physical or mental dependency on a habitual action that causes symptoms beyond tolerance when suddenly stopped. Such symptoms make the addict feel helpless to stop, and so he continues the habit. Addiction creates a kind of faulty information loop in the mind. As a result, the individual's various bodies crumble and fall into disarray, causing gaps through which non-organic beings can breach his mind. Most such beings belong to type B non-organic beings wishing to participate in the person's experience, such as using an addictive substance. Addiction to some drugs causes disorder in the reality assessment sensors of the brain, and the data transmitted to the brain through the 5 senses are assessed incorrectly to the extent that a drug-addicted individual may develop distorted perception of size, volume, and distance. This misperception may not only lead the addict to misinterpret people or objects observed, but may even persuade the individual to jump from a height of, for example, Lu M, thinking it is only 1 minute. Impaired reality assessment sensors activate other sensors that increase the chances of seeing the non-organic beings. Addiction can be developed through conscious and unconscious processes. In a conscious process, the tendency for addiction develops and increases gradually. For instance, a person who initially starts smoking occasionally becomes addicted gradually and cannot easily stop the habit. In an unconscious process, subliminal factors contribute to addiction development. One such factor is the mind bodies of deceased people who had a form of addiction before their death. These type B beings can possess a susceptible individual's mind and lead him toward addiction. In this case, the affected individual follows an inclination towards addiction with no conscious decisions or clear explanations. Furthermore, unconscious inclination toward addiction can occur under the influence of subliminal persuasive messages transmitted to the unconscious part of the mind from, for example, music. In other words, as there exists matter and antimatter, energy and anti-energy, so also consciousness and anti-consciousness exist in the material world, and we are constantly exposed to them. The human mind is very intricate and contains many strong protective filters. One such filter is the logic filter, which blocks any data it defines as illogical and contrary to one's beliefs. Yet another part of the mind can process any subliminal data it encounters. Therefore, the central unit of the mind has no limitations for comprehension of different languages, even subliminal messages behind words and texts, their anti-consciousness. Hence, any input can affect the mind, and such influence becomes apparent in the individual's behavior. Based on this principle, the entire data input received by the central unit of the mind influences human behavior and inclinations toward the intended direction. Tendency toward addiction is an example of such change in behavior and interests. Use and exploitation of non-organic beings, intentional or unintentional use of non-organic beings for the purpose of predicting the future, fortune-telling, casting spells, or performing magic and similar matters also make one vulnerable to infection by non-organic beings. For instance, in the process of tea leaf, palm, or tarot card reading, the reader establishes a connection with non-organic beings that can strongly affect the reader's life, regardless of his intentions. In fact, it is not the forms that take shape in the cup, the images on the cards, or other reading accessories that provide the information for the reader. Instead, through the reader's will and enthusiasm, non-organic beings impart insight into the desired matters, and thereafter signs and symptoms appear indicating infection by these viruses. Thus, many readers and fortune tellers have chaotic lives as non-organic beings control their affairs. Such viruses also affect customers who visit them for readings. Spells and magic direct exposure to a certain 11 category of spellcasting materials and tools infused with non-organic viruses also cause certain viral infections. To cast these spells, codes consisting of character, numbers, texts, or special writings, often meaningless, activate an associated non-organic virus to start its defined task. People who are unaware of the infection risks of these practices approach practitioners of these fields, seeking help to achieve goals such as having their issues resolved or making others think kindly of them. They seek assistance, unaware that non-organic viruses will then gradually control their lives, and even though one of their problems might appear to be resolved, hundreds of other issues will follow. Additionally, the very act of casting a spell or requesting one will ultimately enslave you to evil forces. Black magic is even worse as the practitioners are intentionally trying to hurt someone. For example, jeopardizing family life, work, or educational conditions, silencing enemies, or forcing or restraining another's behavior. Through such actions, they become infected with not only spell keepers' viruses, but also universe keepers and retribution keepers, attracted by the negative radiation that the practitioner's evil intentions generate. Line coherency of human bodies. Humankind has various bodies such as the physical, mind, psychological, and astral bodies. When these bodies fail to function synchronously, a range of issues from minor disorders to impulsive insanity might occur. In this case, bodies begin functioning independently so that one ments not remember ordinary routines or might easily lose one's temper or self-control over trivial matters. Alcohol consumption and drug use can also cause bodies to go out of sync, substantially increasing people's vulnerability to infection by non-organic viruses. Transmission from parent. People can become infected with non-organic viruses at conception at birth, and at any time throughout their life. The father's non-organic viral infection's transmission happens at conception and the mother's at birth, once the umbilical cord is clamped. Therefore, everybody is born with a degree of infection naturally inherited from parent. So many times these viruses exist concurrently in both child and parent. Such infection affects the programmed self section of the baby's mind. In other words, we play no role in incurring viral infections of this type, as the transmission occurs automatically through parents who similarly inherited them from their ancestors. This mode of transmission transfers various types of non-organic viruses, including spellkeeper, from generation to generation. However, people obtain a great proportion of their viral infection through life via the programmable self-2 section of the mind. 2. Specific causes. Certain factors of humankind's non-organic virus infection are specific to one foot type A non-organic beings. These factors enable type A viruses to play their role in causing HWN infection. Chapter 1 introduced many of these factors, primarily ignorance of the unity and consistency of the material world, desecration of any part of the material world. 5.1. Emission of any negative radiation in the material world, causing corruption and destruction of any kind, and preventing any part of the material world from flourishing and prospering. Intentional and deliberate confrontation with Kamal, and the path to Kamal. Ignorance of the material world's unity and consistency. The material world is the manifestation of the one creator, and its parts in harmony, consistency, and unity are a single reflection of the Creator. Thus, being a monotheist means seeing the unity of the material world and considering any part of this world separated, detached, or independent results from W1 awareness of this unity and puts one in the realm of shirk. From a different outlook, one who breaks the vow of you alone we ask for help for each and everything and takes refuge in someone or something other than the one creator is unaware of the unity of the material world and commits shirk. To acknowledge any source or power other than the creator, associating anything as equal to and giving his attributes to others besides him opens humankind to infection by type A non-organic beings. In most cases, depression indicates this infection in the individual. Desecration of any part of the material world, considering that the material world is the manifestation of its creator. Each of its elements has a guardian of type A non-organic beings. In the event that a person harms or desecrates any part of this totality, universe keepers will oppose him. Consequently, even unnecessarily breaking a tree branch or disparaging any other being for amusement causes infection by these viruses. Only when a living being, such as weed or insect, causes damage or illness, or in the natural food chain where people need to eat other living beings low survive, is it not considered desecration and will not result in encountering type A non-organic beings. All natural organisms and processes are significant and play a role in the ecosystem. Therefore, humankind, with our incomplete awareness, cannot consider any of them insignificant or less significant than ourselves. No person, based on his personal preferences, can overlook their importance and violate them. Any negation or refusal of their value and their sanctity is considered blasphemy. Humankind must recognize that any being in this material world is a face of its creator and should walk on earth with respect and appreciation. Emission of negative radiation. To disrespect a human being or to violate anyone's rights is a desecration of a part of the material world. Disrespect can appear as lie, by defaming someone, or by false accusation of another person. Committing these offenses emits a form of negative consciousness radiation that attracts type A non-organic beings toward the offender. For instance, although one might be feeling good and positive while speaking ill of someone in their absence, one's emission of negative radiation attract these viruses toward the individual and present an opportunity for them to possess the individual's mind. Consciousness radiation consists of neither matter nor energy. It is not quantitative, but is beyond time and space. Therefore, any offense creates negative consciousness radiation that affects the entire universe. In other words, every human offense and wrongdoing causes consciousness pollution, incurring invasion by non-organic beings, causing corruption and destruction, preventing the flourishing and prospering, or causing corruption and destruction of any part of the universe desecrates creation and releases negative radiation. Any wastage or inappropriate usage of any element of existence or any actions against any being's development or growth can be considered as corruption. For instance, if a piece of meat is left to rot, it is wasted. And when someone's enthusiasm for something is crushed, that person is prevented from flourishing. Thus, both behaviors cause corruption and destruction. Even by complaining about the weather, we cause corruption. We certainly cause corruption by denying the intelligence of the universe and the role of interuniversal consciousness and its applications. The concepts of blasphemy, shirk, and corruption are far more significant than we have yet realized.